It began with a scream no one in the galaxy was supposed to hear. Not from a throat, not from a living thing, but from a dying civilization's last breath, hurled across the stars like a bottle tossed into a burning ocean. A universal SOS beacon, encoded in dead languages and ancient protocols, burst in the heart of the Zorvani Alliance. A desperate plea, one forbidden by interstellar law, outlawed after the Last Contact War. It was never meant to be used again, because the last time it was, they answered, but now, the Zorvani had no choice. The Shrike had come. The galaxy had feared them in whispers. A brutal, hive-minded race of conquerors that didn't negotiate, didn't warn. They simply arrived and consumed. In 3 cycles, the Zorvani had lost 7 of their core worlds. Their moons burned, their peace treaties shredded like parchment, their diplomats killed on sight, their once glorious space stations drifted silent in orbit, clawed open from the inside. The Zorvani High Council convened inside a buried command chamber, somewhere beneath the shattered surface of Solaris Prime. Generals, scientists, and statesmen stared at the blinking light, the beacon interface, a technology buried for centuries. Some wept, some argued, others trembled. High Chancellor Vexa stood silent before it. "They will come," one advisor whispered. "If we send it, they will come." Vexa pressed her palm to the panel. "I know," she said. "That's why we're sending it." The beacon flared to life. Frequency bands surged across all known communication channels. Subspace screamed. And far, far away, in a system most have forgotten, Earth heard it. Earth, classified in galactic registries as a Death World Class V, one of the highest known ratings of planetary hostility. Unpredictable climate, violent weather, megafauna capable of killing armored vehicles, airborne bacteria that could liquefy alien lungs in seconds. But that wasn't the reason other species avoided it. The real reason? The humans. No one truly knew what happened after the Terran Confederacy had gone dark 300 years ago. Rumors said their last fleet vanished into deep space after the Civil Rift War. Their colonies went silent. Their diplomats stopped attending council sessions. Their last transmission to the galaxy was simple: do not contact us again. The Council of Worlds obeyed. Until now, high above Earth's gravity well, a silent array of defense satellites spun in a tight lattice, a web of steel, AI, and vengeance. No organic minds piloted the systems anymore. Earth had long since passed the threshold of post-sapient war governance. It no longer needed to think about war. It had simply prepared for it. Forever. So when the Zorvani SOS struck the net, Earth's sky woke up. Thousands of subroutines activated. Neural AI cores split the message into quantum threads, dissecting it in microseconds. The threat profile of the Shrike, known but previously ignored, surged from yellow to red. Civilian alerts did not ring. There was no media panic, because Earth's citizens had been trained from birth for this. The data passed through Earth's atmospheric grid and was delivered, without ceremony, to the Defense Oversight Council, comprised entirely of humans with minds augmented to simulate 10,000 tactical possibilities per second. A vote was held. Unanimous. Authorization granted. Operation Reawakening. The old fleet, buried beneath lunar surfaces and asteroid cores, began to rise. In a massive shipyard beneath the black side of Saturn's rings, TNS Vengeance Protocol ignited its Singularity core. It hadn't moved in 2 centuries. Dust and ice cascaded off its hull like snow from a waking giant. Its captain, a war veteran who hadn't aged since the stasis protocols began, opened her eyes. "Where?" she whispered. The AI responded. "Zorvani space. Coordinates locked. SOS triggered. Hostile force. Shrike Dominion." The captain grinned. So they poked the galaxy's soft underbelly and thought Earth was still sleeping. She stood. Let's remind them what Deathworlders do when they're invited. In Earth's capital, the Interstellar Strike Authority raised the ancient flags of war, symbols not seen since the last time the stars burned under human fire. In less than 12 hours, Earth's first resurgence fleet launched. No fanfare, no announcements, just the sound of thunder ripping the silence of space. Meanwhile, in the Zorvani heart worlds, hope had long died. Their fleet was decimated, their skies darkened with Shrike carriers. Refugees flooded underground cities. Even the bravest Zorvani commanders had started preparing for surrender protocols. They believed their signal had failed, until the stars changed. In a remote system on the edge of Zorvani territory, a Shrike battle group detected an unknown warp breach. No signature, no recognized transponder codes. Before they could investigate, the system's largest star blinked out, not literally, but the intensity was eclipsed by something massive emerging from warp. Dozens of dark, angular vessels, shaped like jagged blades and humming with barely contained energy, arrived without a word. The Shrike responded the only way they knew how. Attack first. Ask never. Their ships opened fire. And for exactly 13.7 seconds, their shots mattered. Then the first Death Worlder ship activated its counterland systems, reverse physics torpedoes and gravity shear bombs. Shrike vessels disappeared, torn apart at the atomic level. It wasn't war. It was execution. On Solaris Prime, Chancellor Vexa stood again in the same chamber, watching the intercepted battle feeds. No banners, no introductions, no demands. Just one simple transmission from the unknown fleet, broadcast across all Zorvani bands in perfect, cold galactic standard. SOS received. Assistance en route. She fell into her chair. Her voice trembled. They actually came. And no one in that room, no one across the Alliance, knew whether to feel relieved or absolutely terrified, because Death Worlders had responded, and they did not believe in mercy. You don't send a distress call to Earth and expect diplomats. You don't ask the apex species of a Death World for help and think you'll get calm discussions or peacekeepers. What you get is force. When the beacon screamed across space and reached Earth's void-shrouded systems, the galaxy didn't realize what had just been triggered. It wasn't just a call for aid, it was a trigger, a switch, a final line that the galaxy had all but forgotten until someone was stupid or desperate enough to cross it. And when Earth heard that call, they didn't hesitate. In orbit above Neptune, the Black Line came alive. It wasn't a fleet. It was a relic, a remnant of an age when humanity carved empires from asteroid belts and burned gods from thrones. The ships parked along the rings of forgotten gas giants were never meant to fly again. Too dangerous, too powerful, too final. But when Earth activated protocol, Deathwake, the Black Line didn't wait for committee votes or council debates. It woke up. Massive fusion forge vessels uncoiled from planetary shadows like sleeping titans. Their hulls shimmered with dynamic armor, shifting like obsidian waves. Reactor cores spun to life, casting blue-white halos brighter than the nearby sun. Each warship bore names etched in history. Redemption through fire, fury unending, silence of mercy. Old names, dead names, now reborn. And across every ship, a single phrase blinked to life on command decks. SOS received. Response initiated. On Earth's surface, the civilian population received no panic alert, because there was no panic. Every Terran-born post-Exodus had been trained since childhood in emergency response protocols. Children carried evacuation drills in school. Teens knew how to operate defense drones before they could legally drive. Elders remembered the last Whisper War, when Earth nearly turned to ash from within. But what mattered most now wasn't readiness. It was purpose. In a society built atop survival, pain wasn't weakness. It was heritage. The moment the beacon was acknowledged, tens of thousands of humans volunteered without being asked. Engineers flooded orbital elevators. Pilots entered cryopods without goodbye. Cybernetics teams prepped the battleframe cores, titanic humanoid war machines designed for close-quarters boarding actions. No speeches, no press conferences, no glory. Just one unifying thought pulsing to the minds of humanity. Someone hurt the ones who call for help. Let's show them why that was a mistake. The first wave launched in under 5 hours. They didn't use traditional warp gates. Earth's jump drives ran on exotic fold tech, derived from broken laws of thermodynamics. Systems that hadn't been shared with the galaxy because Earth didn't trust the galaxy. So when the first strike wing disappeared into fold space, it wasn't just fast. It was undetectable. No ripple. No warning. just presence, and then absence. In less than 3 minutes, they emerged at the edge of Zorvani space, deep within Shrike-controlled territory. And they didn't stop to talk. The Shrike Dominion had known war, but not like this. The first Deathworlder vessel, TNS Hammerfall, exited Fold Space mid-strike, dropping straight through a Shrike orbital command ring, like a blade through paper. Its gravitic claws ripped entire platforms from their moorings before flipping into an anti-orbital dive, deploying kinetic rods from orbit with no explosive payload, just mass, speed, and gravity. Entire Shrike cities ceased to exist before they knew what hit them. Shrike fleet admirals scrambled, roaring commands to defensive squadrons. They launched thousands of interceptors, deployed hunter drones, activated their dreadnought cannons, only to watch them detonate before they even fired. Earth's ships didn't operate on conventional weapon systems. They ran on predictive warfare algorithms, controlled by semi-autonomous AI cores, each one modeling Shrike responses in real time, down to the nanosecond. By the time Shrike fire control systems acquired a target, those targets were already behind them, cloaked or mid-strike. It was like fighting gods. On the bridge of TNS Vengeance Protocol, Commander Lara Kale watched the carnage unfold across her tactical screen. She didn't blink. She didn't gloat. She simply gave the next order. Advance to the Zorvani forward colonies. Drop relief corps. Deploy medships and orbit stabilizers. And get me eyes on the Shrike breeding planets. Her second officer, a cybernetically augmented tactician named Rios, grinned beneath his tactical mask. Plans. She met his eyes coldly. No more generations of Shrike. Meanwhile, in the shattered bunkers of Zorvani Command, survivors watched the impossible. Live feeds from orbit showed Shrike fleets breaking apart in eerie silence. Human fighters moved with insectal speed, flipping and diving with physics-defying grace. Their boarding teams, Deathborn Marines, descended in mech frames etched with ancient Terran war totems, using sonic disruptors and blade charges that carved through chitin like water through silk. Zorvani officers wept openly. Their gods hadn't answered them. Earth had. But even more terrifying than the raw power of the Deathworlder fleet was its silence. There were no taunts, no threats, no demands, just grim, surgical devastation. When the Zorvani Minister of Defense tried to hail the incoming fleet, there was no response. Only a single transmission, repeating across all bands. Assistance in progress. Remain clear of operational zones. In the outer chambers of the Council of Neutral Species, word began to spread. Someone activated the SOS beacon. Someone got an answer. And now the galaxy was watching entire Shrike sectors go dark. It wasn't just military efficiency that frightened the diplomats. It was a precision. The Deathworlders weren't indiscriminately bombing. They were cleaning. They left surviving Zorvani facilities untouched, deployed nanite recultivation towers, and dispatched orbital hospitals staffed by motion-calibrated androids. At the same time, every Shrike structure, every hive spire, command node, and supply cradle was marked, targeted, and erased. The Council fell into panic, because Earth was invading. They were saving, and that terrified the galaxy more than war ever could. In the final hours of the second day, the Shrike began to retreat, not regroup, retreat, something the Shrike had never done in centuries of war. And still, Earth said nothing. No ultimatum, no offer surrender, because the humans weren't here to negotiate. They were here because someone called for help. And once Earth answered, it would not stop until the threat was ended. The Shrike didn't just lose battles. They lost faith, and that, for a species bred to conquer, was worse than death. For centuries, the Shrike had ruled through terror. No species dared challenge them, not because of their strength, but because of their certainty. They moved like storms, shattered fleets with ease, cracked planets open like fruit. They weren't warriors. They were inevitability. But now, that certainty had cracked. Not from words, not from diplomacy, from silence, the kind that followed a predator's growl, the kind that came before the killing blow. And as Shrike hives collapsed under precise orbital strikes, as their war cruisers blinked into oblivion without a sound, one truth spread across their dominion, like fire in a dry forest. They had picked a fight with Deathworlders, and the Deathworlders had answered. The Zorvani capital, Solaris Prime, no longer burned, not because the Shrike had stopped attacking, but because Earth had made it stop. Orbital defense grids, rebuilt in hours using Terran auto foundries, now encircled the planet like a halo. Med ships, silent and pristine, descended in waves, dispatching robotic units with nanite foam and trauma beam stretchers. Where once there were screams, now came order, efficiency, calm, and above it all, the Resurgence fleet remained motionless in orbit. Dozens of black, angular ships, no insignias, no banners, no requests for thanks. They didn't beam down human soldiers for photo ops. They didn't declare victory. They didn't even speak. They simply watched and waited because the job wasn't done. Inside the command bridge of the TNS Silence of Mercy, Commander Lara Kale stood before a 3D projection of Shrike space. The AI had mapped their entire hive structure in under 12 hours, thanks to the Shrike's mistake of linking their command cores through quantum threads. What once made them fast, efficient, and unbeatable now made them vulnerable. Every node, every spawning cradle, every forward invasion fleet, marked, tracked, exposed. Kale's voice was calm. How many left? The AI's voice replied, cold and clean. 1,142 active Shrike systems, 48 central hives, 3 confirmed over queens, all mobile, all fleeing. Direction? Toward uncharted space, possibly seeking reinforcement or alternate host systems. She nodded. Then they'll bring this infection with them, and that's not acceptable. She turned to her tactical officer. Prepare the second wave. Far from the front lines, in the spiraling chambers of the Galactic Council, chaos had finally become contagious. Diplomats from 100 species shouted across the Grand Chamber, half in awe, half in terror. Some demanded the Council sanction Earth for deploying forbidden weaponry. Others begged to send envoys with gratitude and offerings. And still others, the wisest, or perhaps just the oldest, sat in silence, because they knew what this meant. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had believed Earth was dead, dormant, or simply disinterested. But now they knew Earth had simply been waiting. And the moment someone begged for help, the humans hadn't sent a message back. They had sent a fleet. The Council finally voted to send an emissary to Earth. But when the envoy arrived, navigating past orbital defense rings the size of small moons, through AIs that scanned his ship down to the atom, he wasn't met by a human. He was met by a hologram. It showed no face, just a voice. Message received. It said, assistance rendered. The envoy bowed, and the Shrike, under eradication. I was sent to negotiate thanks, to ensure peace, to propose treaties. The voice interrupted. You are mistaken. How so? This wasn't negotiation. The voice said coldly. This was a response. The envoy swallowed. Then what does Earth want in return? The silence that followed made him tremble. Then the voice returned. We don't want tribute. We don't want your gratitude. We don't even want your friendship. We just want the galaxy to remember this. Never again let your silence invite slaughter. Never again make war your first language. And never again forget that we are still here. Back in Shrike space, the second wave began. Earth's forces had learned, adapted, improved. Their ships now deployed fractal drones that could self-replicate and swarm entire Shrike hives before resistance could even form. Hunter-killer pods burrowed into planetary crusts, targeting breeding centers. And when the Overqueens, the matriarchs of the Shrike race, tried to flee into dark space, Earth followed, not to parley, but to finish what had been started. One Overqueen tried to send a universal message, her first and last act of surrender, but the humans didn't respond. The fleet that intercepted her did not broadcast. It simply opened its gravitic drives wide and ripped her ship in half. The Zorvani, once on the brink of extinction, now stood in awe of their unlikely saviors. They offered worlds. riches, political alliance. Earth declined all of it. The only thing the humans accepted? A list, a full record of strike attacks over the past 2 centuries. Names, coordinates, victims, every planet scarred, every species hunted, every system burned. Why? Because Earth believed in justice. And Earth never left a score unsettled. By the time the 3rd solar cycle ended, Shrike space was silent. No movement, no signals, no resistance. Just empty hives, smoking husks, and the quiet breath of the systems they once consumed, now reclaimed by peace. The last Shrike world blinked off the scanners. No explosion, no flourish, just a status update, cleansed, and still, Earth's fleet remained a moment longer, just to be sure, in the deep reaches of space, beyond the edge of all map systems. One Zorvani scientist asked a question that rippled through 1,000 species. What happens if Earth ever turns that power on us? The answer came from a human ambassador, the only one Earth ever sent, and only once. He didn't smile. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "Don't make us come back." Some fleets bring hope. Some bring judgment. Earth brought both, wrapped in steel. It began not with explosions, but with silence. The kind that hums through a warship just before the final command. The kind that makes even the bravest soldiers pause before stepping out of the dropship. And in that silence, the galaxy learned one final, irreversible lesson. When Deathworlders answer a call for help, they don't just rescue the wounded, they bury the guilty. After the final Shrike signal went dark, the galaxy thought it was over. Peace would return. Earth would vanish back into its mysterious fold space and vanish like a ghost. The Council would hold ceremonies. Species would rebuild. Everyone would thank the Deathworlders politely and secretly pray to never see them again. But Earth wasn't done, because there was still one question that needed answering. How did this happen in the first place? On Solaris Prime, Zorvani Command opened its archives, line by line, raid by raid. They laid bare every Shrike attack, every ignored distress signal, every planetary beacon that went unanswered. The truth was sickening. Whole systems had begged for help. Worlds were raided again and again. Refugees were hunted. Colonies were sold by corrupt council factions for political favors. For years, the Zorvani and dozens of other protected species have been fed to the Shrike machine like meat through a grinder. And the Council? They had known. They had always known. Earth had wiped out the Shrike. Now it turned its cold gaze toward the ones who had allowed the bloodshed to continue. They didn't announce their investigation. They didn't send lawyers. They sent the Inquisition ships. No banners. No fanfare. Just black vessels that drifted into orbit. Sent a single message. Prepare your records for extraction. Interference will be treated as hostile action. And began compiling evidence. Whole governments scrambled. Data was purged. Systems were scorched. Leaders fled. But Earth had already tapped into old quantum logs, intercepted council transmissions, and dissected entire bureaucracies in weeks. They didn't come for apologies. They came for truth. And when truth emerged, so did the verdicts. In the Kalari system, Councilor Uvar, a man who sold 3 fringe colonies to the Shrike in exchange for mining rights, was found shackled inside his private yacht, left adrift in orbit. No crew, no power, just air and a live broadcast feed beaming his confession into the interstellar net for all to see. In the Myra-T cluster, 6 planetary governors were executed by their own people after Earth released sealed records showing it withheld distress beacons from transmission, fearing political instability. And on the diplomatic moon of Thessex 9, Earth did what no species had dared to do. They declassified the entire Council's hidden logs. Every secret deal, every blood trade, every species sacrificed. Overnight, the Council's credibility shattered. And still, Earth remained silent. Not a single human face appeared in interviews. No politician gave speeches. They left the galaxy to face its own reflection, and it hated what it saw. Species turned on their former allies. Protests erupted. Leaders resigned or vanished. And amid it all, Earth ships continued to drift from system to system, observing, collecting, recording. No one could stop them. No one dared, because Earth hadn't come as conquerors. They had come as executioners wearing the robes of angels. Then came the Treaty of Stone and Fire, not written by Earth, not demanded, just left. One copy delivered to every known government. Simple language, direct terms. Any civilization that attacked a post-SOS world would be marked for annihilation. Any attempt to block or falsify a distress signal would result in removal from the known space map. Earth would not act as galactic police, but as final consequence. Violations would receive no warning, no trial, no second chance. And at the bottom, a final line written not in law, but in memory. Let the galaxy remember who we are and what silence costs. Most civilizations signed immediately. A few tried to resist. They vanished within days, not with spectacle, not with war, with surgical efficiency. No monuments were toppled, no species exterminated, but their fleets were dismantled, command structures imploded, and leaders vanished in the night like whispers caught in a black hole. Earth never invaded their worlds. They simply made it impossible for those worlds to raise their heads again. And then, without ceremony, Earth left. One by one, their ships folded out of known space. No explanation, no celebration. They didn't ask for tribute, didn't claim new territory, didn't raise a single flag. The Death Worlders responded to an SOS. They fulfilled the call, and they vanished, leaving only silence and rebuilt worlds in their wake. But the galaxy would never be the same, because now everyone knew they weren't alone. There existed, in the cold shadow of forgotten systems, a species that had stared down extinction, welcomed it, and forged itself into something worse than war, something better than hope, a force, not one to be summoned lightly, not one to be bargained with, but one that hears. And should the stars cry out again, should another innocent voice whisper help into the void, they will come, not as saviors, but as a final promise of what justice looks like. When born on a death world, the galaxy didn't forget, because Earth made damn sure it never could. Not with flags, not with songs, not with threats, but with a silence that lingers, and a legacy written not in words, but in what was never allowed to happen again. It's been 10 years since Earth vanished back behind the fold. 10 years since the Shrike disappeared, the Council crumbled, and a whisper of war became the roar of judgment. 10 years, and still, every child on every civilized world grows up with the same 3 rules etched into their classroom walls. Always answer a distress call. Never ignore a cry for help. Never make Earth come back. They call it the Death World Doctrine now. Simple, unbreakable, non-negotiable. Not because it's law, because it's truth. A truth carved into the bones of every civilization that survived the reckoning. In the swirling cloud cities of Inari, a merchant ship once picked up a weak distress signal from a damaged freighter floating near the dead zone. It was only a mining vessel. 1 crew member alive. Outdated beacon. The Council's local agent advised ignoring it. Too far. Too small. No risk. The merchant captain turned his ship around anyway. He said later, "If we hadn't gone, who knows who might have?" Because that's the fear now. Not pirates, not warlords. The fear that if you hesitate, if you let one scream go unanswered, they'll hear instead, and answer in their own way. In the quiet archives of the Thal Heshmine Collective, philosophers tried to dissect Earth's behavior. They studied psychology, culture, military doctrine. They projected motives, fears, ambitions. None of it made sense. Why destroy an enemy so thoroughly, only to leave nothing behind? Why not conquer? Why not demand tribute, restructure galactic power? One AI professor finally posed a theory that stuck. Earth does not conquer because it does not need to. Earth responds. That is all. The message was simple. If the galaxy wants peace, keep the volume down, because the humans were still out there, watching, listening, and they were always listening. In the Outer Rim, a pirate fleet once boasted it would revive the Shrike's legacy. They began capturing refugee transports, branding themselves the Iron Brood. They lasted 11 hours. The last recorded image from their command ship showed a dark silhouette emerging from fold space. Black hull, red lights, no insignia, no message, just a flash of blue light. And then nothing, no debris, no survivors, no trace. The system's AI relays marked it only as unregistered Terran vector. But there's another side to Earth legend. Not the fear, not the judgment, the hope. Because in the fringe colonies, where Council aid used to come decades too late, if it came at all, things are different now. A mining station collapses, and 10 species rush to help. A cargo vessel misfires its engine, and rival nations pause their disputes to stabilize it. No one waits. No one debates. Because no one wants to hear a new beacon echo through the stars and realize it's been heard by Earth first. Some say Earth left behind a fleet hidden in fold space. Others say they're cloaked on the edge of every system, waiting for signs of cruelty or betrayal. But most believe something simpler, that Earth left a warning and a promise, and doesn't need to stay visible anymore. Because now, when the stars cry out, the galaxy answers. And somewhere, far from the bustling trade lanes, beyond the reach of star maps and council patrols, there exists a world. Blue oceans, jagged mountains, thunderstorms laced with fire. It is not peaceful. It is not kind. It is home to the only species that ever looked at the void and made it afraid. On that world, deep beneath the ice crust and volcanic ranges, warships sleep. Fold drives pulsing, nanite cores humming in dreamless readiness. They do not wait for war. They wait for need. Because the species that built them, they are no longer conquerors. They are no longer colonists. They are something new, something the galaxy still doesn't fully understand. A civilization forged from extinction, raised in chaos, trained by its own unforgiving planet to be the last, unflinching answer to question. Who do you call when the monsters come? You call Earth, but only once, because once is all you get.